Welcome to the Supply Chain Pioneers podcast, where we highlight industry leaders on the forefront of innovation and technology in planning, procurement, and logistics. Hosted by your supply chain pro to know, Ulf Venn.
Supply Chain Pioneers is powered by Everstream Analytics. Everstream gives you the predictive insights and analytics to make your supply chain faster, smarter, safer, and leaner. Go to everstream.ai to book your demo today. Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Supply Chain Pioneers. And with me today I have Stan Garber, who's a co-founder and president of LevelPath. Hello Stan.
Hello, and thanks for having me on the show. Been a huge fan, excited to talk to you and the audience about myself and what we're doing here at LevelPath and beyond.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And as always, customary, we would like you to first quickly introduce yourself a little bit.
Past the intro. So I'm Stan, one of the co-founders here of LevelPath, but honestly, I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. I have been built, I know we're going to talk a few, but I've been built a few different companies now in my time. And really the cool story about us is me and my co-founder, Alex, have been working together since high school. Both Russian Jewish immigrants came to America in 91, became good friends over lunch in high school. And fast forward a little bit, we've been busy. And this is LevelPath, the latest company we're working on. It's our fourth venture together. And we've had quite a run and quite a bit of stories along the way, and pretty excited about this one.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, this is exactly what we're going to talk about today, right? Is your journey to LevelPath and then also what you're doing right now. As you said, you're an entrepreneur from the very beginning. You always were an innovator, founding new companies. The big question now is what drove you going down that path instead of just doing a standard 9-to-5 job from the very beginning?
I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be an entrepreneur. To sound a little cliche in the beginning, we came to America in 91. My parents were like, hey, we're coming to America because of the American dream. As cliche as it gets, but it's true. And when we got here, my dad and my mom both obviously they had to figure out how to go get jobs, how to figure out a trade, a master. And my dad actually ended up starting a small company. It was an upholstery studio, so furniture making and such. And we came to America, I think we had $2,000 to our name, like totally as a family. That's it. And he had to go learn a trade. He spent 6 months being an apprentice in an upholstery studio, learned it, and then decided to afterwards go build his own that he worked literally in a basement. We bought a house. He worked in the basement doing these things for the first chunk of time. And then he got a store, and I got to watch that as I grew up. I worked with my dad. I saw him running that. Later on, as he was like very much so in his mind, I don't want you to do this, but go do something great. And this is where an opportunity came up. As I mentioned, my co-founder, Alex, him and I started a chapter in our high school. There's a club called Future Business Leaders of America. That's like a chapter. And as you can imagine, we were real popular with the ladies back then. And from that spurred a whole level of interest in stock trading and others. We started and we were like, let's just start a company. We don't know what's going to happen, literally in high school. And we did a few different things very quickly. And we decided to just launch a web design company, going from high school to college. And that kind of led us down this path. And by the time we were done with college, we were just like, I don't think we want to go work for anybody. We built this website company all the way through it. And we were like, let's just keep going and let's see what we can do. And fortunate enough, the only time I had like even 9-to-5 is during the few acquisitions we had and those weren't 9-to-5s because that's not how we're mentally wired. But yeah, I would probably a short answer to a simple question you asked about. I would say my surroundings, my dad was a big influence on like why go build your own. It's fun. You have nobody but to blame yourself at the end of the day. The decisions, the work, like you don't do it, the outcomes don't come. You delay, you don't get it. So it's a big influence for us.
And I can totally see when you have somebody that's working for themselves and earning their own money every day, that this heavily influences you in what you want to do in your life. That's great. And I guess then you're now raising the next level of entrepreneurs going forward. But now we're away from the web design company and go to the next level of your venture, which was Onis, where you were actually changing the world of online ordering, which back then very visionary. These days, everybody orders online food and so on and so forth. So this was a very successful venture acquired by Living Social. online ordering comes with a lot of logistics challenges. So you had a first touch point with supply chains. What are some of the surprises that you didn't anticipate as a web designer that you have to now work with being with logistics? And do you have any fun stories as well, maybe in addition to
Oh my
that?
gosh, we have so many fun stories. Yeah, and just to maybe take one step back and then we'll jump into some of the supply chain things. But online ordering this was 2000. We started working on this in 2000 and I want to say 2005. We started working on this idea and it was still a novel concept, like you mentioned. Today it's ubiquitous. We do it multiple times a day sometimes. And back then it was still a novel idea. I think Papa John's rolled out online ordering in the States and that was still like an interesting idea. People weren't because high-speed internet was not still the dominant force. It took over a few years later. And you were getting when I would call restaurants to be like, hey, do you want to do your full ordering? And they're like, no, I call Cisco or my distributor. And I'm like, no, for your customers. And they were like, why would our customers order online? They call me or they come into my shop. And for us, we were college students at that time. So it was this natural byproduct of, we don't want to talk to somebody in the middle of the night. Like it was a personal like pain of ours. We were like, I'd rather just do this online. We were at a college, we had our laptops, let's do it. And so we started doing this. And this is a great example in entrepreneurship. You're like, there's so much to learn as soon as you do it. And I remember we built the first version of the product and we launched it. It was a small restaurant chain. They had 7 locations. They were the first ones to do this with us. In this funny moment, we launch it. And then we get a call from one of the restaurant owners because they were a franchise. They had a few of them. And they're like, hey, we don't charge the same price for this chicken as the other store. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, we don't do things like, we're like, oh, we didn't think about that, right? It's like that was a day one use case. And we're like, oh, I guess we do need to do that. Okay, so let's quickly go iterate. And the amount of iteration that has to happen. And when you think about beyond just a price of an item, it's the toppings, the tax implications. How do you do like cheese versus double cheese versus like the amount of complexity went off the charts. And then with regards to like when you think about supply chain and logistics, beyond just I think one of the most important things is delivery, radius, deliveries. So we had to rethink how we would do all of this. And we actually innovated some really neat technology back in the day because we actually built software around geolocation. So now when a restaurant would need to say, hey, these are my parameters from where I deliver, because right now they had a map in the restaurant right back then, and they circled the radius. It's $2, $5, $10 for delivery. We had to actually build that. And at that time we had to build our proprietary map structure. Google then made it really easy later on. But like we actually had to build the tech around that. And restaurants, we'd have to work with restaurants to literally put the pins around, map the actual location, the delivery fees, and then you can only take a certain number of deliveries. Here's the estimated times. Like it was a lot back then. The technology wasn't even designed for that. For consumer facing, it was maybe POS behind the scenes, but honestly, it was just a whiteboard or a pen and paper. They were doing this. So we had to codify a lot of that. And you just had challenges. And I remember the only thing about that industry that was rough was Friday and Saturday. For 5 years, I didn't have a Friday or Saturday. That is when most to-go orders truly happen at a higher volume on those days. So I remember multiple times. Remember, it was my wife now, but his girlfriend. We were having an anniversary, and I was trying to be suave and etc. And I just remember like I cracked open a bottle of champagne, and literally I get a call, and the next 2 hours I was supporting restaurants because they had some issues with pricing or something like that came up in the evening. Then another time I was in a movie, and all of a sudden a text message start coming in. You have to run out and support them. So it's just part of the nature of the beast. But logistically, you just figure all of this out. But a lot of the tech just simply didn't exist back in 2007, 2009. So you had to go through and just build and iterate with customers around all of this. And it was an interesting time. We take it for granted. There was a lot of work. Online ordering right now is obviously, I think by 2012, we were doing $500 million in sales for restaurants, which that's a big number annually. But when you think about it today, I'm pretty sure that's about an hour of online ordering in today's environment. It's just such a different world we're living in.
Yeah. But still, that was already huge. And I think here in Germany, a lot of online ordering only started after COVID, frankly. So
yeah, COVID made it much more ubiquitous. It just became part of it. It taught us to do it in a much more rapid succession.
Yeah. it did. I'm not sure always that this is good because going out is also not so bad, getting a breath of fresh air, but yeah. Good. But you didn't stop there because that's just
Yeah.
online ordering. And why wouldn't you just completely pivot and do something entirely different? And you decided, and I would like to know how you transitioned to that, but you decided to enter the world of procurement and you started working on building a solution called Scout RFP. Eventually, that was acquired by Workday, so it's still going on. So, first of all, I would like to know, how did you come from online ordering to
Yeah.
procurement, building an RFP solution, but then also what attracted you to the market of procurement? And were there any surprises there when you first entered?
Always surprises, but how we got there is obviously interesting because you're like very unrelated functional areas. You went from consumer facing almost to like truly B2B. And everything we've done and how Alex and I have just operated, even going back to the web design company idea, we're very first principle founders, very much like, here's a pain point that we experience. Hey, we would love for more websites to exist for companies that, or like restaurants or others that we want to see. Let's go solve that problem. Hey, we would like to order food online at 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night versus talking. Let's go solve that problem. So while we were building Onis at the time, we filled out a ton of RFPs, and it was always email, Excel. There's a handful of large applications back in the day. I classify them more as legacy today. They were just tough to use. They weren't friendly. It was not a delightful experience.
Yeah.
We'll come back to delight in a minute. And I remember one day my co-founder Alex tapped me on the shoulder. He said, "Stan, I have an idea." I was like, "What's up?" He's like, "RFPs." And I cringed. I was like, "Ugh, I don't want RFPs. I don't want to do that." And he was like, "What do you dislike more about RFPs?" Paused for a second. I was like, "I hate when I'm not invited to one, though. You always want to be invited. You just want to decide to do it." And we're like, ordering food online, we just talked through a few examples of it, is a pretty complex process behind the scenes with pricing, with delivery, with POS integrations, credit card integrations, you name it, a lot of these things. I feel like, why is doing an RFP in a web browser so complex? There's got to be, and there's really been this trend that we've seen, this consumerization of the enterprise, meaning how do we take the UX that consumers feel every single day because it's so thoughtfully done and bring it to a corporate environment. And we felt the pain point in procurement sourcing. We knew nothing about it, zero. So what we did is we made a list. Alex and I made a spreadsheet, and with a few others at that time, it was Chris and Andrew, and we went out and we literally just talked to people. So over the course of 6 months, we interviewed about 300 different individuals and figured out what software are they using, how are they using it. And what we found out specifically, because we were focusing on RFPs, not a lot of software. It was just email, Excel, and people that had software didn't use them because they thought it was too clunky. And our idea with Scout was painless RFPs. So we, at that time, we were based out of Cleveland. We were fortunate enough to take on some venture out of San Francisco, and we moved the company out of the hot tech bed of Cleveland out to SF, and loved Cleveland. SF was just slightly a different environment for building really software. And I'm still based out of here and love it. That was the origin story for why the link for how we thought about building Scout.
Yeah. And then what was there? Was it essentially the idea and the need first, and then what you saw, and but you never thought about, okay, what is the size of market, or was that part of the idea as well?
100%. Yeah. I love that you asked that question. The market's huge because when we were building the last company and we just talked about the TAM, the total addressable market, was we were selling into maybe like 100, 150 big restaurant chains in the country. Because when you look at the market, there's about 150 chains that kind of control a lot of it. And then it's a bunch of independents. And we were trying to sell all these big chains. And we had 30 of the big chains, and we were a multi-million-dollar company. Our pricing was obviously very different back then. When you extrapolate, you're like, hey, this can get to maybe a $10 million company. That's it. When you looked at something like this, you're like, it's global. Every single large organization across the world does sourcing, has a procurement organization. Depending on your size, as you get bigger, you'll have more or less people. We're like, there's a huge opportunity here. So yes, I would say TAM, I love that you hit that point, was a huge, hey, let's go after this market. Because even with LevelPath, the new one, the TAM's even bigger than Scout's ultimate business too.
Yeah, I can see that. And that's why we're going to talk about LevelPath next, because you're now disrupting procurement once again with a great new solution. Can you maybe quickly share the core thinking behind founding LevelPath and what it does today?
Yeah.
What was the initial idea and where did it get to?
Yeah, and it's very much so continuation on in the story. And when we got to Workday, big organization, amazing company. Anil and Dave, the founders of it, have built just such a wonderful culture. We got there, timing was crazy. We literally got acquired in 2000 and December of 19. COVID happened in March, right? 3 months later. I think after COVID, I went into the office 3 times, like the whole time. So it's a very timing wise interesting. And what ended up happening, and for us, and we got to learn about procurement in one piece of the puzzle the first 5+ years as we were building Scout. When we got into it though, and I got to Workday and I was like, I needed to buy things. A few big observational moments for us. Like I needed to buy stuff. And it's, hey, who do I go to talk to? I know we have preferred vendors for this. How do I do this? The information is out there in every big company, but it's not always readily available and it's not always known where you need to do or who you need to talk to. It's just a frustration. So there was like one observation. The other observation that kind of happened, and a lot of credit to Workday on this because they pioneered this in Salesforce and others, was you took a step back and you thought about what do you need to run a company? And ultimately, there's three things you need to run a company. When you look at your P&L, your customers or your revenue, and then and your losses come down to your employees and your suppliers. That's what you're paying for. So that your P&L is made of those three things. And when you take a look at it, you're like your customers, you have a customer on a page view. You open up Salesforce, you get a true view of that customer. When we built Scout, we always looked at that time Salesforce to see everything about, and everybody had that access. You got to Workday, and then it was the first time I got a chance to use Workday, and I was like, oh, I could see everything about an employee and my team, everything on a page. Pretty powerful. You see where I'm going with this. And then the third, you're like, hey, supplier on a page. And then everybody's, our ERP is the solution. You're like, oh, you open up the ERP and it's, here's the contact for billing and here's some transactions. I'm like, where's all the other stuff? Well, the reality is all of that information lives in 10 different groups within different companies. Is that going to be the case in 10 years from now? Will the supplier record still be so fragmented in big companies? And this combination of like, how do you make this easier and simpler, and centralization gave us this idea of, let's go build the next procurement application of the future that brings all of this together, that makes it really easy to use. And our whole entire mantra at LevelPath is delightful procurement. And we've got our...
That's delightful.
Yeah, we got our own delight button. It's in the States, they have the easy button for Staples. But there's a lot of inspiration of that's delightful. And like, how do you make the experience? And delight really comes from access, information, and just simplicity at its core. Taking all the principles from UX that we've had all the way from online ordering. And then obviously we're going to talk about AI, I'm pretty sure, but like, how do you rebuild everything with a different mentality in mind? Because the way you're building software today is very different than you were building software 6 years ago. And I've seen a few of these shifts happen from mobile to cloud to now AI native. Like you're just seeing a different, and we're very much so leaning into the AI shift with regards to building the architecture for this product. So our ultimate goal is to make procurement delightful.
So essentially, if I summarize what I know about LevelPath, is you essentially solve one of the bigger issues, I think, in procurement, which is like you're sending out surveys and then nobody really looks at results, for example, is one of the things that I saw that you're trying to solve by doing analytics quite automated and using AI for it. And then you even help with invoicing and bring the whole supplier lifecycle essentially together.
We make it easy from, I want to buy something from a business owner. How do I get to it? Do we have preferred suppliers? To actually doing the sourcing, to doing the contract review, creating that contract, managing the relationship, the obligations with it. And it's a flywheel because it's never ended. Just like employee management, it never ends, or customer management. It just keeps going through this process. And we now have a centralized app that brings it all to life. And literally it's mobile. Like how crazy is it in today's day and age? And when you think about a contract as a stakeholder or as like a leader, I can't just look up a contract easily today for a supplier on your phone. You can look up employee data, you can look up CRM data, but nothing on contracts. It's kind of weird. So we're going to fix that.
Good. So as you already talked about, the big topic of the year, probably also the century, is AI. And LevelPath, being an AI native platform, essentially puts AI into procurement. But as we heard recently, a lot of these AI companies fail to deliver value in organizations. And what makes the way LevelPath operates and also how you implement the software different?
I love this question. We're doing a lot of heavy lifting. And what do I mean by that? There's a lot of there's a lot of apps that have come out that you were like really excited about it for a hot minute. And then reality is a lot of AI still being used, whether it's companies like big organizations have gotten licensed for Copilot, ChatGPT, Anthropic, like some of the core stuff. Copilot just is open AI behind the scenes anyways. And I think what we're doing that's something really different is we're doing the hard part of building a system of record first. What the difference here is, and it's all timing. And I have to say, a lot of this came down to as much as your brilliance is important, but in this case, a little bit of dumb luck really helped us from a timing standpoint. Because when we started working on this idea, we said we wanted to build a system of record truly around the supplier profile and build it from that. And when we started building late 22, ChatGPT released, or OpenAI released ChatGPT in November, I think, of 22. We literally started building a lot of the code in the fall of 22. The first customer went live in May of 23. And that was when the API started coming out to play around with from an enterprise standpoint. We were like, we are going to literally, we have the foundation, we have the enterprise architecture. Now let's embed the actual, we call it Hyperbridge, is what our wrapper around our AI stack looks like. And let's actually build it in the core tech. So when you're actually doing a sourcing event, you're still doing the actual work in LevelPath, but then AI is assisting to do the job. When you're looking, the contract record is in LevelPath, but AI is assisting you to make that better, whether it's reviewing it or agents going through and helping you do a few actions with it. But it's all coming together in one natural environment. I think you have a lot of apps where you're like, you have to have an application and then you're doing some AI work on the application, as they're not really interconnected. Like they're not one app. And at LevelPath, that's exactly what we've done. And if we started this company maybe 2 years like now, maybe we would have not thought about doing the actual platform layer first and started there. And I think for us, it's just different because our customers just are forced into, they have to live and breathe in these system of records. Because that's what their days are spent in. And then you add the AI into it to make it delightful, to make those moments. Because I'm pretty sure if I ask you, like, what's that one moment when you used AI and you're like, whoa, this will change the way I'm going to do my work every day, whether it's summarization, helping me write a set of questions. You're like, this used to take me 10 minutes. Now it takes me 1 second.
There was a moment for me where I used AI and I was like, wow, that's pretty huge. Recently, for a few use cases, I stopped using AI, actually, funnily enough. So for searching online, I go back and skip the summaries because I got too many hallucinations personally. So I like doing the details. And that's what I love about what you just said, because you said we start with the system of record, right? We build clean master data. We have something tangible to iterate on. And then AI is leveraging something that's already there and validated.
Correct.
And I think that makes, for me personally, as a business user, because this is not about me looking up if Han Solo died in Star Wars or not, which the Disney movies don't exist for me, okay? So anyway, it's more critical information. And that's why good data below it is super important. And I think that makes your solution stronger, in my point of view, and believable that it works.
It's a huge factor because it very much so. When you're working on a contract, you have the contract, you have the time, you have the history of that contract. I'm gonna ask a question about it. Guess what? It literally has that data to interpret. There's nothing it needs to think outside. And then the models are getting better. And the cool part about it is the way we've architected is a new model comes out that's just whiz bang better. Great. Snap. Let's plug it in 24 hours. It's live. And we can keep iterating. When you're buying products today, back 20 years ago, you bought a piece of software. It's what you bought. That's it. Like you got it. And with modern architecture, it's like you're buying this today. It's literally going to get better every single week for infinity, basically, as long as we're building this company. And some of it is not even directly us. If there's a new model that comes out tomorrow, that's better. Great. Like that makes it even better in these areas. So it's constantly innovation. This market is evolving so quickly. And we're not doing 2 releases a year. We're pushing code every single week.
Crazy. Okay. But now I have a critical question because I'm in sales, okay? For me, making sure that the customer, the potential customer, the prospect understands what it is that we're delivering, for me, has always a human element to it as well, right? So onboarding solutions are great. And sometimes needed, but the more we rely on these solutions, the more it could be that the human gets out of the loop. And where do you think AI tools can help make the onboarding experience for both sides better? And where might it actually be a hindrance if you don't use it?
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm going to start with the last part of this and to work backwards on the question, because I think you nailed it. You're like, hey, the results weren't clean. You don't trust it. If there's a moment you can't establish some level of trust around it, you're going to stop using it day to day. And I think I think you asked the question earlier too of there's a lot of failed experiments in big companies where it worked in a controlled setting, but then once they release it to a broader sense, the adoption just wasn't there. And folks just didn't build that natural trust. And then a lot of AI, because there's a lot of AI budgets out there today. And every C-suite conversation and direct and board level conversation is like, how are you using AI to help reduce cost? How are you using AI to create more efficiency in the business? And then people try these things and then they try to roll them out. And then we've seen very limited, truly like enterprise-wide rollouts of a lot of things. And I think a lot of that has to do with trust. But I think where the biggest fault of that is people have this crazy expectation that AI will just solve it all day one, right? It's a C-suite or it comes out and they're like, all right, I read this article. I saw this headline. Let's go ahead and implement AI. And they're like, what do you mean? I don't know. We're not going to need more people. Like we could just implement AI. You're like, let's talk about it. And the expectations are really high here. And what I encourage and like what we've seen is like, just start using it in everyday life. Google was not an overnight success. Like the term Googling it, right? Just not an overnight. It's 30 years in the making for it to become the dominant player. And I think a lot of that has to do with time. I think what people have to realize is with AI today, and we've seen in just 3 years, we've seen it go from, hey, I have a question and let me give you an answer, an assistant, to, hey, let me actually take some quick actions for you, which is let me generate this Word document. Let me clean up this few different areas. Just let me like those. And then to this orchestration agent experience where, hey, let me go do 3 or 4 different tasks, try to stitch it together and bring back with an outcome. Is the outcome going to be perfect? Absolutely not, just to be clear. And then the other big part of the challenge you get is think of AI as a brand new PhD level grad that now has entered your department, right? And then you're like, I need to do XYZ. And this grad will literally take the data you give them and they will go just execute on whatever. And the parameters you give is what they do. So if you're like, hey, create me this Excel doc, actually is a good example. Hey, give me the top 10 restaurants in my area that I should go to. That's a question. And let's say I ask 7 of those grads I just got available to go do that. Guess what? The results will vary, very much so. Versus we as now individuals have to become managers of this AI component, where now we have to give it very clear instructions. Please put together a list of 10 restaurants based on these 2 categories. I would like it in a spreadsheet with these 3 columns, and these are the parameters that I need to. Nobody's thinking about it this way, but you have to re-educate, rewire how we work with AI to do it and accomplish. If you do that and you work on that, and it is not a skill that will just happen, it requires trial and error. And then over time, I think systematically, companies like LevelPath, we will actually lay out the templates of it. Mm-hmm. So stakeholders don't have to think about it. A lot of that work will be done for them because that is the context of what procurement is. All of that work, we will provide that. But when you're just opening up ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, like you have to think about it that way when you're actually interacting with it. And then over time, the ultimate thing that we can give back is the resources time. Things that took you hours to do, how do we get them down to seconds to give you the first draft, to give you the iteration, writing emails, writing quick summaries. We all know how much the first draft always takes a little bit of energy, but can you make that faster and just reduce something that would have taken you 30 minutes down to 5? That's a lot of time savings. If you can do that consistently, you are going to give people time back to go work with suppliers, to go work with the business. They might open up 3-4 hours in a day, in an 8-hour day. That's a lot compounded over the week, over the month, over the year that they can go deploy. So I think AI is not going to here to take your jobs. I think the reality that we've seen with our customers already, we've seen AI where they're saying the business is growing. And the reality is procurement and other back of the house functions They're not like, you grow engineers and you grow salespeople. What I've seen consistently over the building companies. Back of the house, let me add more bodies in back of the house. Nobody's asking, no one's giving that. And so you're saying like, hey, you're going to get to a certain level of size, but the business is going to keep growing. You have to become more efficient at the job, and AI can help be a tremendous X factor in that conversation. So you're going to see a lot of that where folks just can handle more, or on the flip side, folks are going to free up to do a little bit more of that relationship building, which everybody says they want to be more strategic. That's a whole different topic and a different conversation that we'd have to dig into. Like, the word strategic is great, but what does that actually mean to those individuals? Like, how do you actually repurpose that time usefully? Yeah, so that's how we think about it ultimately. I think ultimately a lot of stuff starts because the expectations are really high about AI. But if you take it down, you really look at the basic principles, you can achieve so much so quickly.
Yeah. And maybe actually you're a good person to sanity check one of my working theories on exactly that topic. And that is, I think if people can do more, essentially have more time to their disposal, because some of the, I would say, strategic process management is done by AI, I think procurement will transform a little bit into a more travel frequent role where you're more at supplier premises and have to really go down into processes with them and optimize their production and see how you can optimize together with the interactions. And then you first do it on tier one and then you do it on sub tier. So I think if you think about procurement role these days, they say you might have to travel 10% or so. I think in the future, this will be 50 to 60%. That's my theory, that you have to be more active and out there in procurement. And it's a more engaging. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. It aligns very nicely. I have a point of view at which I try to educate whenever anybody's interested in it. I would say like procurement organizations they should be run like sales organizations. And sales organizations, when you think about sales, what do great sales leaders tell you? Get out in the field, right? And go spend time with your customers and prospects. That's the best way to do it. And no different than procurement, because procurement they're supporting the business, whether it's faster time to market on products, whether it's savings with suppliers, process, you name it. So it's spend time with both the actual stakeholders, which is sometimes at the factories, sometimes at the corporate offices, but sit with them, talk to them. And then to your flip side, you have your tier one suppliers. Like, when's the last time you visited them? When is the last time you've like, literally, it's like, you're spending how much with them? Have you seen them in person? Have they seen you in person? Like, when something goes wrong, what happens? Like, 110% love that answer. You do need to do that. And hopefully the time and resources allows you. But then they have to go sell that to the CFO typically, to be like, I need some travel budget unlock.
Yeah.
That becomes a challenge. But your point is spot on. I love it.
Yeah, I think this will happen because once you start doing it, I think you will see savings, right? I think that's pretty obvious. There is some weird thing that somebody made up from engineering department just produces so much scrap at the supplier, and he can just, with one little move, you can remove that and you save so much money, and that you will find a lot in supply chains, I think. And that's something AI will not be able to tell you because you have to literally go and see it for yourself, essentially. So
yeah,
at least not for right now.
What AI can do magically well, though, is, hey, let me look at one of my objectives this year is I want to see customers in this, like my tier one, et cetera. Here's the list based on what you're telling me. Have you done these? And then it's an assistant. It's helping you go through these motions.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. I love it. Good. We talked about the future of procurement and AI. Let's talk about the future of LevelPath a little bit. What are your plans for LevelPath? It's already a pretty holistic solution covering the entire framework, but what do you want to do next?
Right now, we're in execution mode. We've been at it for 3 years. It's been an amazing run. We're over 135. We call ourselves Pathfinders. Over 135 Pathfinders. We've got a presence across the globe right now, so both in America and Europe, but we're going to be expanding like that. So it's going to be two things. One, it's market presence, so letting people actually know who LevelPath is. Because really, when you asked me the question about what's different, how we built it, we spent the first basically year and a half, 2 years building architecture. So the first year, we basically just had no customers. The second year, we onboarded our first batch of customers. And this past year was our first year we actually onboarded, like we actually built a go-to-market motion. So now it's letting people know, and then it's building out the apps on the platform because we did all the hard work of building the architecture. So now you're going to see quite a bit of product releases, including P2P, the invoicing, matching, all of that later this year with LevelPath. And then on the front side, we're going to get deeper and we're going to release, we call it orchestration agents that work across the entire platform that talks to every part of the application. So with the ultimate mission that a few years from now, we get to this simple idea of supplier on a page, like one place where you can actually open up and see all the supplier information, which again, today is just it's not the way it's been done. So we have a long journey ahead, but we're building a generational company. We raised a good amount of funding by design to do that. And we're here to build just a really centric organization around the customer that's focusing on making procurement delightful and bringing it end to end. So we're pumped about it. This is going to be an amazing year ahead.
Perfect. I love that. Good for you, actually. It sounds like you're having a lot of fun and are very passionate about it. I love this.
We are. Oh, and I'll be remiss to say for any of the listeners and such, but we're going to hold, and if you want to come out too, in San Francisco in March, we're going to do Level Up, which is going to be our leveling up the skill sets for AI, for procurement, for this, our first big user conference we're going to do in San Francisco too, just in a few months.
Good. So you have Pathfinders that help others level up. That's great.
There we go. It works well.
It works. Yeah, somebody has thought about this before. Okay, but we spoke about the future of LevelPath. Let's maybe look at the broader market because I think you have a good eye on the market as well. So what do you think are other looming interesting solutions on the market that you will think shape the landscape of procurement in the next few years?
I think I think you're going to get into some of the bigger, heavier companies too that are going to do a lot. I think there's going to be a bunch of consolidation over the next few years in the market. You're already feeling it a little bit just based on there's so many point solutions out there in the market. So I think you're going to see a big shift, not necessarily focusing on any one company. I think what's going to be the biggest trend you're going to see this year is folks really trying to deploy the first wave of agents, like how they build them and how they do them, whether it's cross apps, like multiple apps or cross, and like in LevelPath, it's across the entire app vertical that we have. And I think that's going to be the one thing that I'm very excited about to see how that works this year with customers, because the data cleansing piece is going to be, you nailed it in the front side, right? AI is great and all, but if it doesn't have really centralized data sets and context around them, I think that's going to be interesting to see. I think those experiments and those sets of technologies, I think, are going to be the most interesting to tell. And that's going to open up a series of work before the end of the year and what needs to happen to get companies faster to clean data. I think so. That's going to be the big focus.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, totally agree, actually. Perfect. Okay, so we're at the end of this podcast, but there's one final question. And that always is what I call the hobby question. So obviously building a lot of companies takes a lot of time, but I heard you're a passionate art collector. And for me, the final question would be, what does collecting art pieces and art in general have to do with procurement?
Literally in the name, I feel like half of the time you're trying to go procure a piece of artwork or things that you've noticed that you love, you see. And there's many versions of it, obviously, where you think about there's art that's from artists that maybe are no longer with us, and there's a X quantity of them. And then depending on what it is or the prints or et cetera, you have to go literally find the source for it. Sometimes it's a dealer, sometimes it's an auction house, sometimes it's literally just seeing it while walking down the street and you're like, you got to jump on something quickly. So I think there's a huge component of that. And then on the flip side of it, then you have the living artists that are just amazing as well. And some are in demand, some are not in demand. And then you're also looking for, if they are in demand, like you basically have to go get in line for pieces from them. And then you have to build a habit of buying more from art galleries to get allocated others. So it's this whole, and then the funniest thing, I think you and I were talking about this in advance, like I had my first, from a supply chain standpoint, I had a piece that came in that was in the last 2 months from South Korea. And by default, guess what? Like, I had to pay a tariff on it. It slipped my mind. I totally forgot about it. And I was like, oh, crud. I forgot. There's a tariff associated with this now. And then so here's the bill. And I'm like, got to pay it. I have no choice. And so by default, like everything we're like our customers are experiencing in everyday life, like in the world of just if you're acquiring a certain piece of art and others, like you got to deal with it today. So it's pretty common.
Yeah, that's
Can't,
good.
unfortunately, I can't do a reverse auction on those because those are in higher demand.
Yeah, but also it has a lot to do with relationships, right? And building
Oh,
relationships.
100%. Yes. To be able to get to certain pieces or certain, like what you want. Yes. Knowing people, you nailed it. And I would think you think about chips right now and NVIDIA and the better relationship you have with those partners right now, they're literally just allocations. It's like they have capacity in what they can make and everybody wants to buy more. So now they're literally just saying, you get X number of conductors, you get X number of units. That's it. And the better relationship you have, the more allocation you're going to get.
Yeah. So I have to say, Stan, we're at the end of the podcast. That was such a great experience. Thank you so much for doing this with me today.
For sure. Thank you for having me and for the fun conversation. Excited. Maybe in a year or so we can come back and do this all over with some new stories.
Yeah, of course. I would be excited to see where LevelPath goes next. And if you're excited to see where LevelPath goes next, you first of all watch this episode, which you have done if you see this. And thank you so much for doing that. And as always, have a good morning, afternoon, or night, wherever you are. And with this, we want to say bye-bye.
This was Supply Chain Pioneers. Thanks for watching, listening, or however you are enjoying this podcast. You can find Supply Chain Pioneers on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all other major podcast players, as well as on YouTube at Ulf Talk Supply Chain. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. See you next time.